Vince Gill was discussing his career when a heartbroken fan asked about "Go Rest High on That Mountain." His confession about Keith Whitley and his own fears left Jimmy Fallon speechless. The Tonight Show studio was alive with its signature Tuesday evening energy in Manhattan. The familiar blue and gold lighting created that warm, electric atmosphere that had made the show a late-night institution for decades. Vince Gill sat across from Jimmy Fallon, both engaged in what appeared to be a typical celebrity interview about his legendary country music career and recent accolades. The Roots had just finished their smooth musical transition, and the cameras were rolling hot. Jimmy's iconic curved desk gleamed under the professional studio lights, while the New York City skyline sparkled through the backdrop windows like a constellation of musical dreams and Nashville memories. Vince looked every inch the country music legend he had become. At 67, he still possessed that gentle smile and humble demeanor that had endeared him to fans for over 4 decades. Though now seasoned with the wisdom and depth that came from a lifetime of crafting songs that touched millions of hearts. Dressed in a perfectly tailored navy blazer with his silver hair neatly styled, he radiated the same authentic warmth that had made him one of country music's most beloved figures. "So Vince," Jimmy said, his animated gestures punctuating every word, 20 Grammy Awards, Country Music Hall of Fame, and you just received the CMA Lifetime Achievement Award. That's an incredible legacy. What keeps you passionate about music after all these years?" Vince's eyes lit up with that characteristic blend of humility and genuine love for his craft. "Well, Jimmy, music has always been my language for expressing things I can't say any other way. Whether it's joy, pain, love, loss, songs have this power to connect people in ways that regular conversation just can't reach." The audience was clearly captivated by his sincerity and warmth. Several older fans in the front rows nodding along with obvious appreciation and respect. "And speaking of connecting with people," Jimmy continued, "your guitar work is absolutely legendary. The way you play, it's like the guitar is singing. How did you develop that distinctive style?" Vince's expression became more reflective, more thoughtful. "I've always believed that the guitar should be an extension of your voice, Jimmy. It should say what your heart is feeling when words aren't enough. I spent years learning from masters like Chet Atkins and Albert Lee, trying to make every note count." The conversation was flowing naturally, touching on his musical influences, his songwriting process, and how he had helped shape the sound of modern country music while staying true to traditional roots. The studio audience was completely engaged, hanging on every word from one of Nashville's most respected artists. "Now, I have to ask about some of your most powerful songs," Jimmy said with obvious reverence. "You've written songs that have become part of people's most important moments, weddings, celebrations, and," he paused respectfully, "times of loss. How does it feel to know your music has been there for people during their most difficult times?" Vince nodded slowly, though there was something deeper in his eyes now, something that spoke of the profound responsibility that came with creating music for life's most sacred moments. "It's both an honor and a weight, Jimmy. When someone tells you that a song you wrote helped them through the worst day of their life, you realize that music isn't just entertainment, it's ministry, it's healing." It was in this moment of reflection about music's healing power that a voice from the audience cut through the studio atmosphere with the raw emotion and vulnerability of someone carrying fresh grief. "Mr. Gill?" Both Vince and Jimmy turned toward the sound. In the third row, center section, an older woman in her 70s was standing among the seated audience members. She had silver hair and wore a simple black dress, holding what appeared to be a tissue in her trembling hands. Her eyes were red-rimmed, suggesting recent tears, and there was something in her bearing that spoke of profound loss. "Yes, ma'am," Vince responded immediately, his voice carrying the gentle compassion that had made him beloved not just as an artist, but as a human being. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "My name is Eleanor," the woman replied, her voice steady despite the emotion clearly building. "Eleanor Patterson from Nashville. I've been a fan of yours for 30 years. "Eleanor from Nashville," Vince repeated with a warm smile. "Well, you're practically family then. What did you want to share?" Eleanor took a visible breath, and suddenly the energy in the studio shifted dramatically. The lighthearted conversation about career achievements and musical techniques was about to become something much more personal, much more profound. "Mr. Gill," Eleanor began, her voice gaining strength with conviction, 3 weeks ago, I lost my husband of 52 years to cancer. Harold was a good man, a faithful man, and when we planned his funeral, there was only one song I wanted them to play. The studio fell silent. This wasn't just a fan sharing appreciation. This was someone in the depths of grief reaching out for understanding and connection. We played Go Rest High on That Mountain, Eleanor continued, tears now beginning to flow. And sitting there in that church, listening to your words about saying goodbye to someone you love, I felt like you understood exactly what I was going through. Vince sat motionless, clearly moved by Eleanor's loss and understanding that this conversation was about to touch something deeply meaningful. "But I need to ask you something that's been on my heart," Eleanor said, her voice beginning to break with emotion. "When you wrote that song, who were you thinking about? Because the way you captured that pain, that sense of letting go while holding on, it felt like you had been where I am now." The silence that followed was profound. This wasn't just about songwriting techniques. This was about the source of art that touches the deepest places of human experience. Vince stared at Eleanor for a long moment, clearly struggling with emotions and memories that he had kept largely private throughout his career. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, more vulnerable, stripped of all professional distance. "Eleanor," Vince said gently, "I'm so sorry for your loss. 52 years with someone you love, that's a beautiful gift, even though saying goodbye is the hardest thing in the world." Without hesitation, without consulting producers or following any protocol, Vince Gill stood up from his chair and walked directly into the audience toward Eleanor. "Ma'am," Vince said as he reached Eleanor's row, "may I sit with you for a moment?" Eleanor nodded through her tears, and the surrounding audience members quietly made room. Vince sat down beside her, both of them now facing each other in this profound moment of shared understanding about loss and grief. "To answer your question, Eleanor," Vince began, his voice now carrying the weight of decades of hidden pain, "I wrote that song for Keith Whitley. He was a friend, a fellow musician, and when he died way too young, I couldn't find words to express what I was feeling." The studio audience was completely silent, recognizing they were witnessing something deeply personal and sacred. "But here's what I've never told anyone publicly," Vince continued, his voice growing more emotional. "I wasn't just writing about Keith's death. I was writing about my own fear of losing everyone I love. Every time I looked at my wife, my children, my friends, I was terrified that they would be taken from me too." Eleanor was nodding knowingly, clearly understanding this complex mixture of grief and fear. "That song came from a place of absolute terror, Eleanor," Vince said, his voice now thick with emotion. "Terror that love means loss, that caring about someone means eventually having to say goodbye. Keith's death reminded me that none of us are promised tomorrow." Jimmy had left his desk and was now standing at the edge of the stage, clearly recognizing that they were witnessing something unprecedented in its honesty and vulnerability. "But writing that song taught me something," Vince continued, looking directly at Eleanor. "It taught me that grief isn't the price we pay for love. It's love with nowhere to go. When we lose someone, that love doesn't disappear. It just changes form." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, worn guitar pick. "This was Keith's guitar pick," Vince said, showing it to Eleanor and the cameras. "He gave it to me a week before he died. I've carried it with me for 35 years, not because I'm stuck in grief, but because it reminds me that the people we love live on in the music, in the memories, in the way they changed us." He placed the pick in Eleanor's hands. "I want you to have this, Eleanor, because your Harold lives on in the love you shared, in the memories you created, in the way you're honoring him by being here tonight." The studio was completely silent, except for the soft sounds of people being moved to tears by this unexpected moment of grace and healing. "And Eleanor," Vince continued, his voice now filled with hard-earned wisdom, "when I sing that song now, I'm not just singing about letting go. I'm singing about the privilege of having had something so precious that losing it breaks your heart. Your grief is the other side of your gratitude." The audience began to applaud, but Vince held up his hand gently. "That mountain I sing about, Eleanor, it's not a place where our loved ones go to be gone from us. It's a place where they go to watch over us, to be free from pain while we carry their love forward down here." Eleanor was crying openly now, but her tears seemed different. Not just grief, but a kind of peace mixed with sorrow. "Harold isn't gone, sweetheart," Vince said, taking her hand. He's resting high on that mountain, and every time you hear that song, every time you feel his love, he's reaching down from that peaceful place to remind you that love really is stronger than death. Jimmy, his voice thick with emotion, addressed both Vince and Eleanor. This is why music matters. This is why songs like Go Rest High on That Mountain become more than entertainment. They become healing. But Vince wasn't finished. He began removing his navy blazer. "Eleanor," he said, draping the jacket over her shoulders, "this jacket has been with me through countless performances of that song. Tonight, it goes home with someone who understands that grief and gratitude are two sides of the same love." Eleanor, now wearing Vince's jacket, looked somehow comforted, not cured of her grief, but held by the understanding that she wasn't alone in it. "And Eleanor," Vince continued, "I want you to know that every time I perform that song from now on, I'll be thinking about you and Harold and the beautiful love you shared for 52 years. He turned to address the cameras directly. "To anyone who's lost someone they can't imagine living without, your love story isn't over. It's just changed form. The mountain where they rest high isn't the end of your connection. It's the beginning of a different kind of love, one that can't be taken away by death." The show ended differently that night. No standard closing monologue, no promotional segments. Just Vince and Jimmy sitting with Eleanor as the credits rolled, three people connected by the understanding that sometimes the most powerful songs come not from happiness, but from the courage to transform grief into something that can heal others. When the episode aired 2 weeks later, it became the most watched Tonight Show segment featuring a country music artist in the show's history. The hashtag Go Rest High trended globally as millions of viewers shared their own stories of loss and the songs that had helped them through their darkest times. Eleanor became an unexpected advocate for grief support and the healing power of music, speaking at bereavement groups about how art can provide comfort during loss. She always wore Vince's jacket to these appearances. Vince never spoke publicly about changing his approach to performing that song, but those who attended his concerts afterward noticed something different. Before singing Go Rest High on That Mountain, he would often share a brief word about how love transcends death, turning each performance into a moment of collective healing. And every time he played Keith Whitley's guitar pick before that song, Vince thought about Eleanor Patterson and the night he finally admitted that his most famous song had been born not just from loss, but from the fear of loss, and how sharing that fear with someone who understood had transformed it into hope. Sometimes the most powerful healing comes not from forgetting our pain, but from discovering that our deepest wounds can become sources of light for others walking through their own darkness. In country music, as in life, the most beautiful songs often emerge from the most broken hearts, creating bridges of understanding between strangers who share the universal experience of love and loss.